The Chandrayaan-3 mission, a symbol of India's growing prowess in space exploration, was intended to mark the pinnacle of years of relentless effort. Its destination was the mysterious, perpetual shadowed south pole of the Moon, a region hitherto untouched by any nation due to its extreme cold and long-term darkness. This unexplored region was the last great enigma of our nearest cosmic neighbor, harboring secrets that could redefine our understanding of the Moon. The successful landing of the Vikram lander and the Pragyan rover marked a monumental achievement, as India became the fourth country to soft land in the Moon's extreme environment. The initial images transmitted back to Earth were met with jubilation, with the first soil composition data confirming the presence of water ice, a valuable resource for future lunar explorers. It seemed India had not just reached the Moon, but opened the door to a new era of lunar colonization. However, as the raw data began to pour in, the celebratory atmosphere began to dissipate. Elation gave way to focused silence, then to quiet, bewildered whispers on scientific forums. Soon, sober, almost frightening warnings emerged from the planet's most authoritative minds. This is not science fiction. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the cold, uncomfortable reality that emerged when the most sophisticated rover ever built by humankind discovered something on the Moon that defied the very foundations of physics. The launch of Chandrayaan-3 was not just another lunar mission. It was an act of redemption, a direct successor to the tragically failed Chandrayaan-2 mission in 2019. This time, every system functioned flawlessly. The Vikram lander touched down with jeweler-like precision at the pre-selected points on the South Pole. This region had been the holy grail of lunar science for decades. Radar soundings hinted at the presence of ancient water ice, possibly preserving organic molecules from the formation of the solar system, rare minerals locked in permanently cold traps, and perhaps clues to something deeper, more fundamental. But the South Pole's landscape is incredibly treacherous. Deep craters with sheer walls, areas of perpetual darkness interspersed with blindingly bright peaks of eternal light. Extreme temperature swings capable of destroying even the toughest alloys. Before Chandrayaan-3, no one had dared attempt such a feat, and India did it. With this success, it joined the elite club of spacefaring nations capable of soft landings in extreme environments. Pragyan's initial data confirmed the most optimistic predictions. Frozen water as pure ice mixed with regolith, silicates, titanium, iron, aluminum, magnesium, everything needed to sustain a future base and produce fuel locally. It was the key to a sustained human presence on the Moon. However, behind these encouraging headlines lay something else, a far more disturbing discovery that never made it into the official press releases or celebratory statements. As the six-wheeled Pragyan began its journey across the dusty lunar regolith, its onboard spectrometers, instruments capable of determining the elemental and mineralogical composition of matter by how it absorbs or reflects light, powered up to full capacity. The goal was routine, to create a detailed chemical map of the surface. But what they recorded plunged scientists into a state of profound shock and disbelief in their own instruments. The spectra clearly showed signatures of a substance with no analogues in any known sample. Lunar, terrestrial, or meteoritic. It matched no entry in the vast databases of Earth's minerals. Its optical properties were absurd. It did not reflect light in the expected manner. Instead, it seemed to absorb electromagnetic radiation with incredible efficiency, not only in the visible range, but also in infrared and possibly even radio frequencies. Furthermore, instruments recorded anomalous distortion of radio waves near samples of this material, as if space-time around it was slightly warped. One engineer on the spectrometry team, in despair, described it as a black hole for energy, but on a microscopic scale. The renowned physicist Michio Kaku, reviewing the preliminary findings, publicly called the find not just an anomaly, but a terrifying enigma. Why? Because if this material formed naturally, it means our fundamental understanding of condensed matter physics, quantum mechanics, and chemistry is deeply flawed. If it is artificial in origin, it means someone or something placed it there, possibly long before humanity appeared. The discovery of this substance alone would have been enough to trigger emergency high-level international consultations and a revision of all existing scientific paradigms. But, as it turned out, this was merely the harbinger of a much larger and more frightening revelation. Following the shock of the spectral data, ISRO activated Pragyan's subsurface sounding radar. This instrument, sending radio waves deep into the lunar crust and analyzing the reflected signals, was designed to search for ice layers or geological structures. What it detected beneath the rover's wheels, just tens of meters down, caused genuine shock in mission control. The radar signals revealed not just voids or caves. They showed the presence of a gigantic, clearly artificial structure. The reflections formed distinct geometric patterns, straight lines intersecting at precise angles, repeating rectangular shapes, symmetrical arcs. Preliminary reconstructions based on the radar data looked not like natural formations, but like blueprints for a complex engineered edifice, possibly multi-leveled. Michio Kaku, granted access to this data, stated in a private conversation with colleagues that the structure appeared distinctly metallic, incredibly organized, undeniably created with purpose, and judging by the layers of regolith above it, incredibly ancient. To compound the sense of impending catastrophe, the dimensions of the subsurface cavity were colossal, large enough to contain a small city or a giant mechanism of unknown purpose. And then the thermal anomalies began. Temperature sensors aboard the Vikram lander and Pragyan itself started recording strange, inexplicable fluctuations in the thermal background. The temperature at the landing site, far from sunlight, should have been stably low. Instead, instruments showed sharp, localized heat spikes that arose and faded with no apparent connection to any external source like the sun or internal geological activity. The moon, considered geologically dead for billions of years, was showing signs of internal energy precisely at the location of the mysterious subsurface structure. What could be the source? Residual heat from unknown radioactive materials. An active power system inside this presumed construct, or, most incredibly and frighteningly of all, an active artificial structure only recently awakened by vibrations or electromagnetic emissions from the rover. For the first time in official scientific circles, the unthinkable question began to be openly asked. Did we just stumble upon an ancient alien base? Or perhaps, even more terrifying in its metaphysical implications, traces of a forgotten human civilization that reached the moon in times immemorial. In the days following the discovery of the underground structure, Pragyan's behavior changed drastically. The rover, previously executing commands flawlessly, began acting unpredictably. It ignored instructions from Earth, sending streams of meaningless corrupted data to ground stations. Its movement, once smooth and precise, became jerky and chaotic. It would freeze in place, then suddenly start moving in a random direction. ISRO officials attributed this to the extreme environmental conditions: cold, dust, possible mechanical damage from maneuvering in complex terrain. However, Behind closed doors, mission insiders were far less optimistic. One anonymous engineer involved in developing the control systems claimed the rover's malfunctions began to the minute when Pragyan drove directly over the central part of the underground anomaly, where the geometric signals were most intense. Another specialist in electromagnetic compatibility hypothesized that the mysterious surface material or radiation from below created powerful, unaccounted-for interference, disrupting the rover's sensitive electronics. And then came the silence. Pragyan stopped transmitting signals. Complete loss of communication. This was not just a hardware failure, it was silence hanging over a discovery that was itself a warning. If what lies hidden beneath the lunar South Pole is indeed ancient and still active, then every action we take there might be a trigger, activating mechanisms whose principles we do not understand and whose consequences we cannot predict. Michio Kaku issued an urgent appeal to the global community, insisting on the creation of a global coalition to study the anomaly and categorically warning against any unilateral actions by any nation. His words sounded like a caution from an ancient myth. We may have awakened something that should not have been touched. News of Chandrayaan-3’s silence spread across the world like wildfire. The discovery of an unidentified material, the detection of a geometric underground void, and the sudden shutdown of the rover. This triad of facts triggered the activation of international security protocols at a level usually reserved for nuclear incidents or global pandemics. Spy satellites of the leading space powers, the USA, NASA via NRO, China, CNSA, Europe, ESA, were immediately retargeted to Chandrayaan-3’s landing zone. Unconfirmed but persistent leaks emerged, claiming that US military satellites detected a powerful, short-lived burst of electromagnetic radiation of unknown origin in the lunar South Pole region, just hours before Pragyan fell silent. Chinese officials urgently requested access to all of ISRO's raw mission data, expressing fears that the detected anomaly could somehow affect Earth's electromagnetic balance or the operation of near-Earth infrastructure. Some experts in closed analytical memos voiced alarming suggestions that the lunar anomaly was already exerting influence, causing unexplained malfunctions in some communication satellites or creating micro-fluctuations in Earth's magnetosphere. At emergency closed-door meetings at the UN and Space Agency headquarters, a word usually applied to biological threats began to be heard: containment. The Chandrayaan-3 mission ceased to be a scientific expedition. It instantly transformed into a problem of planetary security. In an unexpected twist that added a mystical dimension to an already alarming situation, a group of independent researchers, archaeologists, specializing in ancient civilizations and astrophysicists interested in the history of astronomy, conducted a comparative analysis. They overlaid the geometric patterns obtained from the lunar radar onto ancient Vedic star maps and diagrams of sacred geometry. The comparison results were staggering. The underground network beneath the lunar South Pole showed a striking, statistically improbable similarity to sacred geometric patterns described in ancient Indian texts, particularly mandalas believed to encode cosmic knowledge and the structure of the universe. Dr. Rakesh Verma, a leading expert in Sanskrit cosmology from Banaras Hindu University, publicly stated that the proportions and angles of the sublunar structure corresponded to the description of symbolic gates, or DVR, mentioned in the hymns of the Rig Veda, gates leading to the realm beyond the dark sky, the abode of ancestors or other entities. Although the mainstream scientific community treats these parallels with extreme skepticism, dismissing them as coincidence or manifestations of universal mathematical patterns. The mere similarity fueled a growing movement among philosophers, alternative historians, and even some physicists. They are increasingly asking the question, did ancient civilizations possess some knowledge of the moon's true nature, knowledge that we, with our technology, are only beginning to rediscover? Was the moon not merely a satellite, but something more in their cosmogony? Simultaneously with these speculations, new data began to leak, allegedly smuggled out of ISRO's internal network by anonymous whistleblowers, deeply alarmed by the scale of the discovery. These files, fragments of which appeared on specialized forums, contained shocking details about the preliminary analysis of samples conducted by Pragyan before contact was lost. They claimed the rover detected not just unknown chemical compounds, but materials with photonic properties unparalleled in known science. The substance scanned, or perhaps even microscopically captured by the manipulator before shutdown, was described as exhibiting properties of photon negativity. It did not merely absorb light across the entire visible and infrared spectrum with near absolute efficiency. According to the leaks, it apparently could bend or even completely cancel electromagnetic fields in its immediate vicinity. Such behavior suggested the material could be metastable, existing in a state violating ordinary thermodynamic laws, or, even more sensationally, a product of deliberate engineering design. One property described in the leaked documents gave rise to the term optical dark matter. If this data is confirmed, it would mean the lunar South Pole holds a material interacting with light and energy in ways previously considered theoretically impossible. A material that, in theory, could conceal entire regions from any form of detection, from optical telescopes to radars and lidars, rendering them invisible or distorting their signature beyond recognition. If such technology exists, or existed on the moon, then our physics textbooks are obsolete not just partially, they are obsolete fundamentally. We stand on the threshold of a new scientific revolution, driven perhaps by ancient, alien, or forgotten engineering. As the world holds its breath in anxious anticipation, and Chandrayaan-3 continues its silence in the eternal shadows of the South Pole, the most frightening question echoes louder. What now? What happens next? What if the moon is not just a lifeless rock orbiting Earth, but a container, a vessel holding technology or information from an era so distant it predates all known human history? What if our probes, in their curiosity and quest for knowledge, began unlocking something that was intentionally sealed and never meant to be reopened? What if the silence of Pragyan is not a system failure, but a deliberate, final warning sent to us before it was disabled or destroyed? The concluding phrase of Michio Kaku's recent interview sounded like an epitaph to humanity's innocence. There are things in the universe we were never meant to touch, and now we may have touched one of them. The world waits, breath-baited, scanning every bit of data that might still come from lunar orbit or ground-based telescopes. But the moon remains silent. Chandrayaan-3 was meant to be a scientific milestone, a symbol of progress, a flag planted not out of arrogance, but out of hope for future cooperation and understanding. Yet what it uncovered may not be a triumph, but a threshold beyond which lies the unknown. Because what if the lunar South Pole remained untouched, not by accident? What if it was avoided deliberately? What if beneath its frozen craters and age-old shadows lies something ancient, waiting, buried, watching? Not a message, not a sign, but a question cast into the cosmic abyss. Will they return? We built a machine of incredible complexity. We sent it across the cosmic void, And when it touched that forbidden place, we lost control, not just of the rover, but of the story we told ourselves about our place in the universe. And now, as scientists worldwide fall silent, revising their theories as satellites are retasked from scientific objectives to observation and reconnaissance, and as physicists are forced to formulate not theories but warnings, one truth becomes increasingly undeniable. We were not the first to arrive on the moon, and we may not be the only ones watching it now. What do you believe Chandrayaan-3 truly uncovered? Ancient technology, an incomprehensible natural anomaly, or evidence of something not belonging to our world? Share your thoughts. Tell this story if you feel this discovery is not the end of a mission, but the beginning of a mystery whose scale extends far beyond the moon itself.